Welcome to Laurier's Teaching Excellence Conversation Series. I'm Deborah Van Eyneton, Academic Director of Teaching Excellence and Innovation at Wilfrid Laurier University. And today I'm with Steve Razavi from the Lazaridis School of Business and Economics, who received the 2025 Sustained Excellence in Teaching Award. Steve is known for his energy, creativity, and unwavering commitment to student success. He creates dynamic, inclusive, and engaging learning environments that help students not only master course content, but also get ahead in job interviews and form professional networks. Steve has taught nearly 100 courses across multiple levels and topics with an approach grounded in evidence-based pedagogy and sustained mentorship, not to mention fun. His classes often begin with Bob Marley and end with students leaving more confident, capable, and inspired, and I'm so excited to talk with him today. Steve, thanks so much for joining me here to talk about teaching and the student experience. And I want to start with a quote that you've got in your teaching dossier that seems like the foundation of your practice. I just love this. If you're not having fun, then what's the point, right? So what does that mean in terms of your teaching practice?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Deborah. And where that quote came from, so previous to academic life, I was a management consultant, I was an HR director, so lots of exciting work and interesting jobs. And then I found this job and I was like, wow, I can do something that I'm good at and also have a lot of fun while I'm doing it. So that's kind of where the quote came from. And it's also something I really hope my students find in their career. Like I have amazing students who are going to do great things in accounting and finance and marketing, but I'm hopeful they're going to choose the path that allows them to do well and be successful, but also enjoy the type of work that they're doing.
Yeah, it's funny because I often say to students, if you love, and I say this to my own kids, if you love what you're doing, you're going to be good at it. That's part of having a really good time doing it. But in terms of your teaching practice, what does fun look like? I mean, one of the things is starting with music, right? I love that.
Yeah, so I love music, all kinds of music, and one of my favorite things about going to sporting events, you get the arena lights go down, the music comes on, everybody starts getting excited, or like baseball, I always wonder, how do they pick that song? It seems like each player gets to pick their own walk-up music. So I started doing it just for fun, but then found it as a way to engage with students too and connect with them by asking them what they want to hear. So they pick the songs, and then I play them as they're coming into the classroom, just something to do and keep them interested while they're waiting the 5 or 10 minutes until class starts. And also practically, lets me check like the AV, make sure the audio is working for the other things that I do. And it's just fun. I had one student come in one day, we were playing Brown Eyed Girl at a student's request.
Excellent song.
And she said, this is vibey. So it was like, all right, they're coming in, they're getting in a mindset to hopefully enjoy the experience.
And also keep the energy up, right?
Absolutely.
Instead of I'm just going to sit here. And it's funny because this kind of signals some of your core values in terms of your teaching. You note engagement, discussion, and individualized consideration and support. But the engagement piece, the discussion piece, when you start like that, the students are like, okay, this is not, I'm not just supposed to sit there, right? And passively listen.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got them doing things.
Yeah, I hope so. And from that engagement piece, something else that I've been doing is carving out some of the in-class time, instead of having them do presentations, carve out some of the in-class time so they can work on their group project. And then I go around to each of the tables. We're usually in the active learning classroom in Lazaridis Hall. So I go around to each of the tables. I get to sit down at the table with them, answer some of their questions, hear some of the discussion, gives me a good opportunity to kind of see who's here. Check in, learn some more names and all of that. So just trying to find other opportunities to engage with the students, let them ask their questions or let me kind of listen in and hear what's going on. And then the discussion piece was more so about a good practice to have students reflect on the content we're teaching. So all of them, it's
Yeah.
an HR class, but all of them have been part of training. Since they were in high school, you start a new job, you get some type of training. So we say, okay, tell me about your best training experience, your worst training experience, and have them kind of share in front of the class, and good opportunity for them to self-reflect, discuss, and I guess that also bridges into engaging with the content.
But also just making connections to the course substantive material, right?
Absolutely.
I've had so many discussions lately that kind of center on the notion it's not about conveying content. That's not just what we do, right? It's about the learning experience. And so content is part of that. But clearly in your practice, right, it is conveyed in different ways. The students chew on it in different ways, right? And being part of that discussion and engaging really helps in cementing that learning.
Yep.
The individualized consideration, like I can't express how that jumps out for me in your nomination dossier. You know, you've just got such a focus on the individual student, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. So I wonder if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So outside the classroom, I invite them to book a meeting with me, come and drop by the office, and I say I can help you with your resumes and cover letters, with your interview preparation, with being a reference for you, helping you to expand your network, negotiating your job offers. I put a bunch of things on the table and say, come and meet with me, and I can give you some one-on-one feedback. So the resume, cover letter, a lot of the students at this stage applying for their co-op experiences. So helping them kind of level up resume, cover letter, or maybe they're sending out their resumes, cover letters, getting a whole bunch of interviews, but not getting job offers. So we say, okay, let's kind of meet, strategize about interviews, role play, question, answer, and help them kind of level up that part of the job search process.
So that must take a lot of time, right? Like how many students take you up on your offer?
It feels like at first maybe I'll have a class of 60. Yeah, one or two people might come by and then start sharing with some of their friends, and they'll get a few others coming by. So it's certainly not a majority of the class, but I'd say out of a class of 60, maybe there's going to be at least 10, 15, 20 people that'll come by for either interview, resume, cover letter, or they'll email about these things, being a reference for them. So a good portion of the class.
It's funny because you talk in your teaching dossier about signature pedagogies. That was a new one for me, right? And so that's linking, as I understand it, professional training and development into academic course learning.
Yes, and easier for my course if I'm teaching human resources. This is something where, yes, we talk about what companies should do when they're screening applications, asking interview questions, hiring employees, but then I kind of flip it around and say, and here's what you need to do. Open up the black box. Here's what you need to know if you want to do well at each of these stages of the process. So I think luckily the content I'm teaching lends itself well to that type of pedagogy.
But also when they're in the job, right? The kind of behaviors that they should embody, the kinds of ethics, you know, all these discussions about what is your role and, you know, how to be a professional. And does that also feature into some of the course training, like not only individualized pieces, but also in terms of the course assessments and some of the exercises and things?
Yeah, so what I try to do with the group project, I've got it broken down into smaller kind of deliverables throughout the term. So I'll pick out from each of the units kind of what is kind of the big, practical, important piece that they can apply. And so at the beginning of the project, they're all choosing an organization they're interested in working in one day. And then we follow that company throughout the course, and we'll do things like, is this company required to follow the Employment Equity Act? And then once you pick a specific job within the company, what types of interview questions can we ask to hire people into this job? So that's an example of the application piece.
So that I assume that would all prepare them to get out there.
Hopefully, yeah, not just as employees, but my students, most of them don't want to be HR professionals like I was. They want to be leading and managing finance, accounting, marketing, operations, some other part of a business operation. But if they want to get to that level, they certainly need to have a good understanding of training, hiring, all the things we talk about in the course.
One of the things that also jumps out in your nomination package is your students talking about how they feel safe in their class. They feel like they can be vulnerable, they can make mistakes, Can you talk a little bit about how you create that sense of
Mhm.
safety in the classroom?
That's a great question, Deborah. I don't know if there's one specific thing I'm doing. It's something I have heard from students is that they appreciate how I respond to their responses. So if somebody has an incorrect response, then I guess the way that I'm responding to them is creating a safe space to kind of take a chance, give a response even if you're not 100% sure if it's correct. So it's pointing out that there's probably a more accurate response, or there's probably a different approach that should be taken at the outset of this case. And then hearing from other students within the class to help show kind of the more preferred option there. So I think it's part of the way I respond to the students, and maybe just kind of that general openness that I try to give to them.
Because it's dual, right? It's a dual sense of safety because it's with
Yeah.
you, and they're obviously, by third or fourth year, I think this has dimmed somewhat, but
Yeah.
certainly undergraduate students often struggle approaching their professors
Hmm.
and putting themselves out there, and then vis-a-vis their peers, right? Maybe I
Yeah.
won't sound as smart, maybe I'm
Hmm.
not as secure in my knowledge, and maybe I
Yes.
should just sit back and listen, right?
Hmm.
So it's really a dual challenge for them, right?
Hmm.
But
Absolutely, and it feels so good when I have a student come up and say, Steve, I usually don't like participating in class or speaking in class,
yeah.
but this has really kind of allowed me to engage in this space. Or another student who came up and felt comfortable telling me the correct pronunciation of his name. So that's something I try to get when I'm moving around to each of the
Right,
tables
right,
and
right,
that,
right.
but I wasn't getting the pronunciation correct. And he came up and told me, and I said, thank you. Thank you for telling me. It's really important to me that
Yeah.
I get your pronunciation correct. And he said, you've created the space that I feel totally comfortable coming and telling you this. So that made me feel really good too.
Yeah, and so those are non-traditional students, or the so-called non-traditional student, right? That is increasingly,
Mhm.
a large proportion of our classes.
Mhm.
And so the ways in which we approach those students and support those students
Yeah,
also needs to reflect some of the unique challenges that they face, et cetera.
absolutely, Deborah. So I had a student, this was a number of years ago, come up and share with me that he felt an improvement to the content would have been taking out some of the gendered language that I had. So before a lot of that discussion was happening in the classroom, he gave that feedback, and I thought, okay, not a big issue. I can certainly make some of these modifications and see how that goes. And so I started using less gendered language in some of the examples, the cases. I'm now an author on the textbook we use for the course, and I've taken out a lot of the
Ah,
gendered or
yeah.
traditional terms that were used in that book to try to make that a more inclusive space as well. So that was something I still remember a number of years later, and that hopefully has made an impact for other students as well.
Yeah, and I love that that feedback from the students is translating directly into your publications too, right?
Yeah.
Right? Reinforcing that learning. Um, you have taught now, well, at the time of your dossier it said 94 courses, but it must be more now.
I think I'm getting close to 100.
To
It's
100
difficult to find out the
courses.
exact count, but
So 100 courses,
Mhm.
always 3 terms a year
Mhm.
across 10 different subjects. That is a lot of teaching.
Mhm.
Right? You're also course coordinator for a major required course in the program.
Yes.
So, how has your teaching evolved over time, right? When you think back,
Mhm.
2012, you started teaching here, so
Mhm.
2012, 2013, 2014. How does that look different than 2022, 2023, 2024 kind of thing?
Yeah, so the types of courses I've been teaching have evolved too. So actually my first term, fall 2012, I taught 4 sections of this third year HR course. And then I started moving away
So
from
was that
that.
one right away?
That
Four
one right
sections.
away.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Yes.
And then I moved
Yeah.
away from it. I started teaching fourth year elective courses. I taught extensively. I was very young in my career, academic career, taught
Yeah.
extensively in our MBA programs. I was teaching full-time and part-time Waterloo MBA students. We used to have a campus in Toronto. I was
Oh
teaching the
my.
part-time Toronto MBA students in our program. And then I cycled back to this third year course, and that's been my real focus post tenure, post sabbatical, has been this course. And that's kind of where the focus has shifted to now, and where I'm happy and where I feel like I'm making an impact on our students. And then in terms of the things that I'm doing in the classroom,
Yeah,
that's
what's had the most
changed.
impact?
Yeah, it's the most impact. Like there's been things that have kind of evolved slowly over time, like the way I do the participation, the way I do the
Yes.
group project.
Yes.
Those have evolved slowly over time. And I guess just in terms of big changes, just feeling like I can be myself in the classroom. I can be my authentic self in the
Yeah.
classroom.
Yeah.
I can relax. I can have fun, enjoy my time with the students and with the content, and just kind of feeling more comfortable, more confident in my true self in the classroom.
So is that how you keep your teaching fresh and your energy high, right? It's just being yourself, playing good music.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And also just feeding off of our students. Like they
Yeah.
bring the energy to the class too.
Yeah.
I feel like they want to engage, learn, have a good experience, have fun. Those are our Laurier students. And so feeding off of their energy and taking their feedback and using that to kind of continue shifting the way I'm doing things in the classroom.
So in the early stages of your teaching, was it as professionally kind of focused, or has that also been something that's changed over time, like just become more
I think that's
focused for you?
changed. That's
Yeah.
changed too. That's changed too. It's definitely more content focused. At the outset, I wanted to feel like, okay, I'm a master of this content. Let me talk all about the content piece. And then now it's shifted more to kind of the practical piece too. Like they need the content, but they can also get that from reading the textbook and
Yeah.
kind of doing that
Yeah.
stuff. So I want to talk more about kind of the impact or how it can help them now or in the future.
Yeah, and it's something that we need to, I guess, address.
Mhm.
The Canadian undergraduate survey data is
Mhm.
very clear
Mhm.
that students are quite instrumental in their approach to education, right?
Mhm.
It's a means to, employment.
Yep.
So you're providing a great learning experience with lots of prep for future employment.
Yeah, hopefully, like they're all here to get a degree, but hopefully we can do something in the classroom that's going to excite them, engage them, interest them, be helpful for their own self-interest and motivation outside of just getting the grade, getting the degree.
It's funny because you yourself, but also a few of the letters note that I guess it's the HR course, might be a
Yeah.
little dry,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
but they don't perceive it as such.
Yeah.
So how do you dress it up? How do you take this material that, as noted, might be a bit dry and turn it into something that they're really chewing on, they're going home, they're thinking about, right? And they're
Yeah.
prepared, they're excited to come to class the next time.
Yes, so I know what the perception of HR is, and
Yeah.
they know well too. So they see it on their schedule. They're like, "Uh-oh, this is going to be
I
boring."
got to get through this.
Yeah. So one thing I started doing was I go through my end of term student evaluations and I pull out some of the fun quotes that students write for me and put them up on the board of the first day of class. I said, here's what some of the people who recently took this class had to say about it. And super funny. It's like, I thought this was going to be the worst course or the most boring course I've ever
Ever.
taken. But Steve made this such a great experience. I learned something. I had fun. So I put up those types of quotes, or the person who says, I only do well in the quant, math, technical based courses. I was not looking forward to a more qualitative course like this, but Steve made it enjoyable and I was able to do well and have a good experience. So I put up some of the quotes and I show them that yes, this is an HR course. Yes, we're talking about employment law, employer obligations, rules and regulations, all of that stuff, but there's going to be some stuff in here that can help you now in the future.
But also, some of the methods you use, the Kahoot,
Yeah.
the poll everywhere, clips from, I love that. You show a clip from The Office, right?
Mhm.
So, talk about that. How do you use that to maintain, to keep that energy high, to keep the material fresh, to get students engaged and discussing?
Yes, well, I tried to think about what did I want when I was a student, and the answer is probably not Steve talking about whatever concept for an hour and 20 minutes. So I
Indeed.
try to say, all right, I'm going to talk. My classes are still fairly lecture-based, but I'm going to try to break that up. And I have a poll questions that sometimes comes up at the beginning of class when they're coming in. And I might say something like, do you think it's fair that the top earning CEO makes 200 times more than an average employee? So I have a poll question that they can put in their
Wow,
vote
that's starting
for.
with something controversial.
Yeah, so just put something up and they can log in their votes, and then we share later what the consensus was and hear their justification for their point. So I use the poll questions, the Kahoots. Those quizzes have been fun. They seem to love those still. So at the end of each chapter, we have a few practice questions, and we're just going into, after this, our final exam review class. So I'm going to put up a poll question saying, do you want to play our last Kahoot individually or as a team? Let them choose how they want to do their practice questions for this one. And then the video clips, so that's a nice way to kind of break up the Steve talking for however long.
Yeah.
And it's informative, it's fun, super cool to like put up a clip of Dwight doing his fire safety training before we talk about training and hear the students laughing and making jokes and watching along. Then afterwards we talk about, well, what training methods were being used, what principles of learning did you see in the clip, how could things have been done better? So try to have some learning from the fun breaks as well.
Oh, I love it. You really do put student feedback at the heart of your teaching. And I noticed that in a number of different ways, you get formative feedback at specific points in the term, in your courses. Talk about that a little bit, because, you know, I think that serves so many different purposes, right? It helps you take the pulse of what's going on in the classroom, getting feedback that you can implement immediately or for the next offering. But it also shows the students and it signals to them that you care, that you're watching, that you're listening.
Yes, so that's evolved a lot over the years too. So I think I was doing that right at the beginning, paper and pencil, quick
Cue card kind of thing.
Yeah. Rate me as an instructor, give me some feedback and advice. And then I created the Qualtrics survey that we've been using. And then I recently saw I'm getting almost no responses now. So maybe I'm doing everything perfectly. I don't know. But what I did now is on their weekly engagement participation forms they're required to submit, I have a space there for advice, feedback for Steve. And just trying to collect some feedback, and students like it. They said,
so are they providing feedback on that?
To some extent, like sometimes I just get, have a great weekend or great lectures this week, but I just had one saying, can you post the final exam review slides early? So I did that. So that's a nice way. The Qualtrics one's nice because it's anonymous. The engagement participation forms, I know who it's coming from. But it's something the students appreciate because some of them complete those end of term evaluations, but there's nothing in there that's going to benefit them. But if they're doing my evaluation, I used to do formally at the first third and then second third of the term. So I said, you can impact right now. Every section coming through here is different. So tell me, what do you want to see more of, less of? What can I improve on?
But it also provides a kind of a paper trail for you on teaching effectiveness, right? Because you can show, you know, what is working in terms of your teaching practice. And I think that as faculty, we often kind of overlook that. Right? We're so focused on, again, sort of getting through the content, making sure, you know, making sure students are enthusiastic and engaged and stuff, but having those little check-ins to make sure, okay, did the learning occur? And you've got it happening in a few different ways. So it's not just you said the first third and then the second third. You're also doing it at the end of every lecture. Aren't you? Every class.
Yeah, every week they submit an engagement participation form, self-reflecting, and then there's an optional space to make song requests and to give me some feedback in terms of the course.
Wonderful. And, you know, so students, they complete your class and you're still with them, right? So you tell them right at the beginning, I was really struck by that. You tell them right at the beginning, I'm not just your instructor for this class. I'm here for you after class. I'm here for you while you're in other classes at Laurier, and I'm here for you when you leave Laurier. Talk a little bit about what, you know, some of the students that have kind of cycled through that over time.
Yes, so probably my favorite part of the job is having students kind of continue engaging. And it's so nice to hear them say, yes, Steve, I do need your help with a reference for the exchange that I want to do. And then I need help with a reference or preparing for an interview for my first full-time job once I leave here. Or now I've gotten an offer. I want to take you up on your offer to help negotiate this job offer. And then as they start getting into, since I've been here for a while now, starting to get into mid-career or more advanced in their careers, saying, Steve, I was just contacted by a headhunter. I have a great job, but they've put something on the table. How should I approach this with my current employer, with this other employer? So still talking about job offer negotiation, training, and help, even when they're maybe a few years into the career.
And you've published on some of this as well.
Yes, yes. So trying to help other management educators help their students. And it's been nice also just having kind of a quick summary I can send to students when they're asking for job offer
Right, right,
negotiation
right, right,
help.
right.
Here's kind of a
Yeah.
foundation. And then let's meet one-on-one if we want to talk about kind of specific strategies for your contract negotiation.
And then I notice the students come back to talk to your students.
That's nice. I love that. Like we have such great students and they're building such excellent careers. So I know they get busy with everything work and outside of work once they leave here, but it would be so nice if we had even more alumni engagement, people coming back as guest speakers. We have the ICE Week in the business program. So
Right.
this is the integrated case exercise. We have alumni judges on the panel. So it's nice to see some former students coming back to help judge the ICE Week presentations.
And you also coach.
Yep. So yeah, I've coached a few case competition teams over the years, most recently the HR competition team, and they've done exceptionally well. They've placed every year that we've gone into this competition, and
amazing. Go Laurier.
Yeah, go Laurier, and that's fun too because then afterwards we went and we put the work in, and afterwards I said, all right, pick a place, let's go out and have breakfast or lunch together or something like that. Let's celebrate you, and it's so nice kind of connecting informally too.
So I'm gonna shift gears a little bit and just talk about support for your peers in terms of teaching. So you're the course coordinator for BU 354, and that's the HR course, right?
Yeah.
How many other instructors are there?
So it depends on the term. Could be as many as 6, 7.
So how many offerings are there per term then?
Well, fall's our busiest. So
Right,
there might be up
right.
to 15 sections perhaps in the fall, and then another few in the winter and spring.
Okay, so you're course coordinator across up to 15 sections. What does that look like? And how do you support your fellow instructors? So what if I were, a brand new instructor, for BU 354,
Yep.
right? And I come to you and I'm like, okay, I'm an instructor.
Good. Well, welcome to the team, Deborah. And good news for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to share with you all the materials you can use for the class. You can, of course, create your own content, but if you want to use my materials, here's my slides, here's those Kahoot quizzes, the poll questions, here's the video clip links to show your students. Here's the current event news articles. We haven't talked about that yet. Every day there's new content in the news about HR related concepts. So here's the news articles I plan on speaking about with my class. So here's everything if you want to teach the course, and I'm here to kind of help along the way. And then I do the creation of the exams and kind of any other liaising with the bookstore or whatever else we need to do logistically. So I just try to set the instructors up as much as they want to be set up with the content I plan on delivering.
But I think one of the side benefits of that, which we struggle with when you have more than one section, is consistency in terms of the student learning experience, right?
Yes.
And also in terms just of provision of content. So, I'm sure that really helps creating that kind of architecture, helps the instructors. Right?
Hopefully, yes. And some of them use everything that I use, and some of them use very little of it. So it's up to them what they want to do with their in-class time. But yeah, everything's there if people do want to use it.
And so do you have them coming to you saying, "Uh-oh, how do I deal with this?" Or, how should I approach that?
Not so much like once the course is underway. It's more so if we have a grad student that wants to teach a course for the first time, I'm the person they come to. They
So
say,
you're
well, you
really
should go.
mentoring.
Yes, so say go and teach Steve's HR course, even new colleagues who are teaching 354 for the first time. And I'll say, if you want, come and sit in on a class, and then let me share the material with you. Let me know if you have any questions. So that's something that's worked with both kind of new colleagues and our grad students.
Yeah, but also outside of this course. So you've got, letters in your dossier that speak to the fact that you're the go-to person, right, for teaching advice. In terms of like other colleagues who've taught, for a good amount of time like you. So you started in 2012, so that's now we're at like 13 years, right?
Wow.
What advice would you give them in terms of keeping their teaching practice fresh, energetic, and also positioning themselves to move forward for Teaching Excellence Award?
Yeah, so if it's established colleagues, then I think the idea is just to really lean into the students. We're lucky that we teach at Laurier and our
Yeah,
students bring the energy, bring
yeah.
the enthusiasm. I think they want to have a good experience. They want to have fun. They want to learn, but they also want to have a good experience and have fun. So I think really just kind of leaning into the students and trying to figure out what's going to work well in terms of content delivery, meeting pedagogical goals, but also really engaging the students and giving them an exceptional experience. So I think just leaning into, listening to, and feeding off of our students would be
And getting
helpful.
that formative feedback,
Yeah.
right? So getting the students to provide that formative feedback, again, that you can document along the way,
Yeah,
right?
that could be helpful. I know we get the comments in the end of term course evaluations, but certainly, and I'm happy to help share with colleagues across the school if people want to see what am I doing for group project, participation engagement, what does this feedback collection form look like?
Using cases.
Totally happy to share all
Yeah.
of that with our colleagues across the school.
So what's next for you?
Good
Like what
question.
what do
So,
you still want to do, right?
yeah,
So
I'm
13 years later, what are the peaks that you want to scale?
I couldn't have predicted my career or even career within Laurier would have gone this way. So who knows? Maybe it's going to be a transition away from this. Right now, I'm super happy doing what I'm doing, and it's a confluence of my teaching, research, and service all kind of converging on this
And your professional
course.
experience.
Absolutely. So it's worked so well the last few years that I've been doing this, but who knows? I'd be totally open to potentially going into seeing if there's other courses or other areas to work on next and kind of seeing like maybe this at some point will stop working so well with this group and then maybe I'll try again going back into like the fourth year the MBA students. So I'll just keep listening to the students and finding where I can provide the most value to our programs.
And continuing to widen that wonderful network of students that you've got leaving Laurier and, representing us.
That would be my dream. I want to see my students get to the top of organizations and I want to have them not forget about us and say, oh, I remember Steve, I remember Laurier, and maybe get in touch and come back and guest speak in the class and tell them where they were a number of years ago and how their career has gone and what's helped them get there.
And helping to mentor the next generation of students.
You got it.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining me here today, Steve.
Thanks for having me, Deborah.
My thanks to Steve Razavi for joining me today, and I hope you will join me for more conversations that celebrate exceptional teaching practices, explore diverse teaching philosophies, and discuss the future of higher education, teaching, and learning.